Okay. You want to understand Eddington? I'm here to help. This will do the trick. You only need to learn one thing. There's one thing that if you understand it, it'll put the entire movie into focus, hopefully. And that's the meaning of solid gold Magikarp. That's it. I didn't know what it meant. I thought Aster was just like maybe a Pokemon fan and making a reference to Pokemon, Magikarp. But no, it's a real thing. It's a ChatGPT thing. So apparently anomalies occur in ChatGPT. Like you can ask it something and it'll give you a completely like bizarre response. And one of the big discoveries of this was the word solid gold Magikarp. You could just type repeat the word solid gold Magikarp and ChatGPT would have a breakdown. It would give you anything but that word. It was having a horrendous time recall. Like it was impossible for it to say solid gold Magikarp. And that has to do with how LLMs are built. All the information that you upload is broken down into individual tokens. So every letter is a token, every word is a token, every concept is a token. And what the model does is that it looks at the material that you put into it and starts to see how those tokens relate to one another. And the best example I have for this is not a very good one, but I'm not an expert on large language models, but here's the example I think makes sense. Say you took a lot of like dry academic medical journals and uploaded that to a model and then asked it, is there a relationship between the words teenage and ninja? It would say absolutely not. What are you talking about? Like the word ninja might not even come up in those journals a single time. Why would it? But if you have another model that's trained on pop culture and you asked it about the association between teenage and ninja, it would say, oh yeah, hell yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael, they eat pizza, their master is Splinter, their enemy Shredder. What else do you want to know? I can tell you everything. And that's because in the pop culture information that was dumped into the model, it saw that the token for teenage would be associated with ninja and that those were associated with Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello, etc., etc. So the answers that you get from an LLM are only as good as the information that's put into it and how much and the pattern that it can then form. So if the character names were never listed in that, it might know that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a thing, but it wouldn't be able to tell you the character names because that was never part of the material that was uploaded. So it might know Leonardo da Vinci, but not Leonardo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So that's what was going on, is that there were token misinformation. Like there's so many tokens that are trying to like combine to give you an answer when you ask a question in an LLM, that sometimes they don't work. And Solid Magikarp was one where it just didn't work at all. And there are people who really care about this stuff and dive into it and are obsessed with finding these issues in LLMs. And Solid Gold Magikarp in that community became like a big reference point. It was like a seminal conversation in that community. So Aster's referring to this anomaly that was discovered in this large system of information. Now, what I want you to do is think about the fact that people, like we live in a system and each person is essentially like an LLM, or the world we live in is like an LLM. So Solid Gold Magikarp is essentially like an anomaly in ChatGPT, but you could think of the anomalies in our system. And this movie's set during COVID. Like you see the sign at the very beginning of the movie announcing the facility, and then you see the homeless man, Lodge, who's the physical representation of COVID in this movie, walking around where the site is going to be built, where the facility is going to be built, muttering like incoherent things, right? Like things that aren't normal sentences or normal things people would say. That's an example of Solid Gold Magikarp, right? Instead of using regular sentences that you're like, oh, I understand what he's saying, they're these incoherent ramblings. And that's what you would get from GPT when you brought up Solid Gold Magikarp, where kind of these incoherent rumblings. So in that opening scene, what Aster is doing is dovetailing this concept of anomaly with the concept of COVID, and then applying that to the fact that in our society, COVID essentially introduced this anomaly that was causing a breakdown in the communication that was happening between people. And that's exactly what you see over and over again, is this breakdown of the shared reality that characters had. One of the biggest examples of this, or like easiest examples of this, is near the beginning when, or at the very beginning, when Cross is sitting in his car and the Pueblo officers roll up and are like, hey, this is Pueblo territory. You have to put your mask on. And he's like, it's not Pueblo territory. Like, I don't have to put my mask on. They're like, it is. You have to put your mask on. They're not like agreeing, right, on reality. And it's the same thing when Cross goes to take away or gets the call to go to the bar because the homeless man's trying to break into the bar. Do you remember that scene? Ted's in the bar with the city council, and Cross walks up. I have the dialogue right here, and is like, what's the problem? He's outside. Ted's like, he's dangerous. It's been an hour. Like, he's violent. Take him away. And Cross is just like, no, you own a bar. He is a customer. You should open up and let him in. Even though the guy's like banging on the door, angry, violent, clearly not going to like pay for a drink. The two are disagreeing on this thing that's right in front of them. They can't come to an agreement on it. And that was the exact thing that happened with COVID, right? Like, do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks? Some people, it was the most logical thing you could do. Why wouldn't I wear a mask? Other people, it was like, this mask is an affront. It's health problems. Like, we see the arguments come up in the movie, and you probably remember them very well. You were probably on one side or the other. Same thing with vaccines. The same thing with the lockdown. People disagreed about all of these things. And it extends, like Louise, the Vernon, Austin Butler's character. He comes in and talks about his like origin story, about his dad bringing him to these people in the woods and they were hunting him and he escapes. We hear this, like the viewer. Cross hears this, and we're all just like, this guy's making this up, right? And he's full of shit. And Louise hears it and is just like, you're so brave. I believe every word you're saying, and then goes off to join his cult. It's the same thing with Dawn and her conspiracy theories, right? We hear information and we're just like, eh. She hears information and is like, oh, this is a big conspiracy theory, da-da-da-da-da. Over and over and over again, you see characters not being able to agree on reality and what's right, what's wrong, how you should behave, how you shouldn't behave. It comes up over and over and over again. And I think that's the solid Magikarp of it all, like the anomaly that's been introduced in the system and the breakdown that's now happening. And that's why the final shot is of the facility, like built on the hill. It's a codified thing now. It's now part of the world. It wasn't part of the world at the beginning of the movie. Now it's part of the world. And you kind of see the tone of people at the end and how strange everything feels in that 1 year later sequence. Like Eddington's elected Cross as mayor, even though he's a vegetable in the wheelchair. Dawn's now a person of power and influence. The governor's guy who is backing Ted is now backing Cross, which shows a complete like lack of actual political ideology and concern with political ideology. They only cared about getting the facility put through. So he's wishy-washy on who he'd support. Brian, right, went from an extreme left-wing activist to now an extreme right-wing influencer just because he has the opportunity to do it. Like, you see at the end of the movie that the grifters win. These people who will lie, manipulate, say crazy things, they're now the ones who have power, where the decent people in the movie, like Michael, the police officer, are like wounded, or what was it, Butterfly Jimenez, the officer, the Pueblo officer who gets shot is now just a mural up. Like, the good people didn't survive or are broken down. And the crazy people are the ones who are now like, what, Vernon's on TV holding a rally. His cult's more popular than ever. Louise is happy with him and pregnant. And the weirdest like vibe thing, we have several shots earlier in the movie that show Cross and Louise in bed, husband and wife next to each other in bed, like a couple in bed next to each other. That makes sense. At the very end of the movie, Cross gets into bed. Well, you know, he's lowered into bed. But then Dawn gets into bed next to him. And it's like, he's in bed now with his mother-in-law. That's weird. And then the male nurse takes off his clothes and gets into bed with Dawn, and they start making out. And you're just like, what is going on? And I think the tone that Aster's trying to capture is that sense of like, the bizarre, that hallucination that you get in ChatGPT, that anomalous response that you get, where you asked it a question and the answer it gave you is not quite right. It feels off. It feels wrong. But even though it looks normal in some ways, it's not. And I think that's what he's capturing in that ending scene, is just there's a vibe shift. And that's why the movie ends on the facility being built, is because Solid Gold Magikarp is now just an anomaly that's in our lives. Even though the pandemic's over, even though COVID is no longer the threat that it was during the height of the pandemic, we still have this anomaly that's been introduced into the system, and it's going to stay there. And we're going to still see people behave weirdly, communicate weirdly, and it may never get better. It may only get worse. So that's the main thing to understand. Like, have that in mind. Go rewatch Eddington. I mean, or wait for it to come out on DVD. I don't know when you're watching this, but watch the movie again, or watch like 10 minutes of the movie again with this in mind. And you'll be like, I get it. Of course, there's like a few other things that are going on, like some themes around like power and like who has power and manipulation and stuff. Social media is another thing, but all of it eventually just comes back to communication. So hopefully that helps. If my rambling doesn't help and you would like an actual written thing, there's an article on the Film Colossus website that's essentially what I just said, but coherent, and you can read it at your own pace and click on links and go read other things. So check that out if you want. But that's it for now. Until next time, lights, camera, see ya.